Hello everybody, and this is the video for the circumference of a circle. Okay, and if we look at our I can statement, it states that I can find the circumference of a circle, understanding how the number pi is used in the situation. And if you don't know what pi is, we will talk about that in just a little bit. Now, just real quick, when we're talking about the circumference, we're kind of talking about the perimeter. Okay, so if you remember, the perimeter is the distance around an object. So if I have this rectangle, and these are the dimensions of this rectangle, I want to know the distance around it. I'm just going to add all those dimensions together. So I'm going to add this side plus this side plus this side plus this one, and that's going to give me the perimeter. So 12 plus 12 plus 5 plus 5 is 34. But what do we do if you want to find the distance around a circle? Because we don't have these edges, we don't have all these distances. Okay, we don't have all these measurements to add up. And that's what circumference is. Circumference is the distance around a circle. Okay, it's just a fancy way of saying the perimeter of a circle. And to know what the circumference is, we have to know what the diameter is, and we have to know what the radius is. Now the diameter is a line segment that goes through the center of the circle, so let's say this is the center right here, okay, and passes from one end of the circle to the other. So this yellow line right here, this is your diameter, okay, whoops, that'll be fine. Now, this red line right here is the radius, because the radius is a line segment that starts on the circle and stops at the center. So it's really just half of the diameter. So here's your radius. So the diameter goes all the way through from one end of the circle to the other, okay, and the radius goes from one end of the circle and stops at the middle. So it's half of the diameter. Okay. Now if we look then, because the radius is half the diameter, I can write this kind of formula right here. Radius equals 1/2 of the diameter, or we also know that the diameter is equal to 2 times the radius. Because if I take this radius and I multiply it again by 2, it's going to give me a second radius, which is going to go from one end of the circle to the other through the middle, which is the same thing as the diameter. Now, if we want to find circumference, we need to use one of these two formulas. Now, the first formula is for if you're given the radius of a circle. The second formula is if you're given the diameter of a circle. Now, this C right here, of course, this stands for circumference, okay? And if you're given the radius, circumference is equal to 2 times pi times r, and r is your radius, okay? And the second formula is circumference equals pi times diameter, because this d is your diameter. Now, if we look at this, this kind of makes sense though, because if the circumference equals pi times the diameter, but we're given the radius, well, we know if we multiply the radius by 2, it's going to give us the diameter. So this 2r is the same thing as the diameter. So that's where you get these formulas from. Now, one quick thing is this pi right here. Okay, this pi is equal to 3.14. Now, of course, I hope most of us know that pi is actually this infinite number that goes on forever. It doesn't have an ending to it. Okay, it just goes on and on and on and on and on without repeating. Okay, but for the sake of these problems and for the sake of this lesson, we're just going to use 3.14 for pi and not use all those extra numbers. Okay, so these are your formulas that you have to memorize, so make sure you have those down. Okay, so here's a problem. If I want to find the circumference of this circle, I am given a line segment that goes from one end of the circle to the middle and it stops. So if it goes just from the middle and it stops in the end of the circle and it doesn't go all the way through, then that's my radius. So I'm told that my r equals 8. And if I go back to my formulas, if I use r, then I have 2 pi r. That's my circumference formula. So circumference equals 2 times pi times my radius. So the circumference equals 2 pi times 8. Okay, because what I did is I just took this 8 right here, this r, because my radius equals 8, and I just substituted into my formula for r. And that's why it's right here. Okay. Now I can multiply, but the cool thing about multiplication is you can multiply in any order you want. So I can do 2 times 8 first, and then multiply pi in the end, and that's what I'm going to do. So I know that my circumference equals 2 times 8, which is 16 pi. Now I can actually do my multiplication of 16 pi, so that's 3.14 times 16. And let's just do it real quick. 6 times 4 is 24. Let's see, 8 and 18. Move over, and then 3.14 times 1 is just 3.1. It's just 314. There we go. Add them up. And I will get, whoops, made some addition mistakes here. I forgot to carry over. There we go. So that's a 0, and that's a 5. Let's just erase this real quick. That's what happens when you rush, guys. Don't do that, because then you'll make those simple mistakes. Okay, so the answer is actually 50. 5,024. Count my numbers after my decimal, 1, 2. So let's bring it over, 1, 2. And there's my answer. So the circumference equals the distance around this circle is 50 and 24 hundredths. Let's look at another problem. But this one, now I have the distance going all the way across the circle. Okay, so it goes through the center right here. And it starts from one end of the circle and goes through the other end. So it goes all the way through, so that is my diameter. So my diameter is equal to 12. And if I look back at my formulas, how did that happen? And if I look back at my formulas, I will see that circumference equals pi times diameter. So let's take this diameter right here and let's plug it in into the formula. So circumference equals pi times 12. Okay, and that's just simple 3.14 times 12. And let's just do it real quick. 8, 2, 6, and then 314. 8, 6. All right. And I need to make sure I count my numbers after the decimal. So 1, 2 numbers after the decimal. So I need to move my decimal over twice. Here we go. And my circumference for this circle is equal to 37.68. So it's pretty simple. All we really need to do is just plug these numbers into the formula. Now, some of these you're not going to be given a circle. You're just going to be given the measurements. You're going to be told that the radius is 7, and you need to figure out what your diameter is and what your circumference is. Well, we know that the diameter is double the radius, right? Because if you remember, if we look at a circle, so I have a circle, there's the center, and if I know that my radius right here is 7, well, the diameter goes all the way through, so it's just adding another radius of 7. So 7 plus 7 is 14. So I already have my diameter. Now, to find my circumference, I just use one of my formulas. And I'm going to use a formula of circumference equals pi times my diameter. Okay, because that's just the easiest one to use. So I need to do 3.14, pi times 14, so 3.14 times 14. Okay, and when I do that, I'm going to get 43.96, or 43 and 96 hundredths. So my circumference equals 43 and 96 hundredths. And I'm done. That problem's all finished. Now, one more. Sometimes you might be given the circumference, but you won't have the radius or the diameter. So I know that the distance around this circle, all the way around, okay, is equal to 78.8. I need to figure out what my radius is, and then I need to figure out what my diameter is. Well, let's look at our formulas. If I know that the formula is circumference equals pi times diameter, and I don't know what the diameter is, that's my variable. That's what I need to solve for. Okay, and I know what my circumference is. So let's make that substitution now with circumference instead of with our diameter. We're kind of working backwards here. So I know that 78.8 equals pi times the diameter. This is multiplication right here. So the cool thing with multiplication is we can cancel out multiplication by doing its opposite, which is division. Because I have pi times diameter, and I want to get this diameter by itself, I need to divide by pi. And whatever I do to one side of an equation, I have to do to the other side. Okay, so if you have your circumference, all you need to do is take your circumference and divide it by pi, and that's going to give you your diameter every single time. Okay. Now, for the sake of time, I'm just going to do the division on my own, on my calculator. Okay. And when we do it, we're going to get an answer of 25.09. Or 25 and 9 hundredths. So now I know my diameter is 25 and 9 hundredths. And if I want to find my radius, you just take your diameter and you divide it by 2. Okay? And when you divide that by 2, you're going to get a radius of 12.54 approximately. I rounded both of these, but you're going to get a radius of about 12.54. Okay? And that's it. That's all we have to do. So the big important keys here is to know our circumference formulas. Is circumference equals 2 times pi times the radius, and circumference equals pi times the diameter. and to make sure that we use 3.14 when we're using pi. Okay, and I hope this helped, guys.